We're in business. Okay. And again, any questions you have, put them in the chat or in the question, and we're more than happy to answer those. What are we going to be talking about today? About choosing the right visual for your campaign. We have some people here who have joined previous webinars, but just to make sure we're on the same page, we're going to very quickly talk about why we think you should recruit on Facebook. Get the basics right, because there's no silver bullet. There's no kind of one formula for finding the perfect picture. You're going to have to do some testing, and in order to do some testing, you need to make sure you get your basics and your basic setup right. So we're going to be talking about that for about 5 minutes also, and then we'll move into the examples, the best practices, showing you all the learnings we have from running about 6,000 campaigns. At the end, there's a little surprise and a free gift for you, because that's the kind of people we are, right? Good. And just to explain you why we think we have some good information, it's because basically we do not do anything else apart from running recruitment campaigns. We analyze about 11 million data points per month. 11 data points per month would probably be not as impressive. So it's a good thing we have the million there. We're active in 7 countries, and 74% of our customers return because they're so happy with the quality of the candidates that we provide them through our campaigns. Now, that's kind of the shameless plug for self-promotion that we put in there. But let's start with the presentation. Why should you recruit on Facebook? And maybe to kind of get the semantics out of the way, when we talk about Facebook, we talk about the whole platform that's now called Meta. It's including the Facebook, or the blue platform as they call themselves. It's including Instagram, it's including Facebook Messenger, and the logo that you probably don't recognize is what's called the Facebook Audience Network. It's the partners of Facebook, where you're actually also able to put advertising on. But for kind of to keep it simple, we'll call it Facebook as of now, but obviously we're referring to the whole platform. And why is it important? And I think, if you're in recruitment, if you're kind of into the webinar today, that's why you're here. You're probably already convinced about using Facebook. But what's the most important benefit of using Facebook is because it can reach people others can't. Most classical job recruitment platforms will target the active job seekers. You can reach those through, indeed, Stepstone, Monster, maybe some local websites like JobAd. But those are people actively looking for a job, while the real potential lies in the passive job seekers. And you need to reach those people because they're not looking for a job, but they're open for a job. And we have some good research on that we could also share if you would want to. They're actually kind of open if the right opportunity passes along. So you need to reach them on the platforms where they are every day, i.e. Facebook. So that's the shameless plug of self-promotion for Facebook. So there you go. And finally, let's dive in to the nitty-gritty. In order to make a successful campaign on Facebook, you need to make sure you get the basics right, because there's a massive amount of data, there's a massive amount of learnings. You can actually kind of fine-tune your performance in real time. But in order to be able to do that, you need to make sure the basics of your campaign are right. Now, have we done the poll already?
Yeah.
Okay, we're done. Kind of fantastic. So let me just have...
I see that we have a very mature audience. If you concerning Meta or Facebook, 89% of the people have already done paid campaigns on Facebook.
Okay, so the voice you're hearing in the background is Steve.
It's 92 actually. It's 92. Going up.
There you go.
93.
Okay, but then I won't have to dwell too long on this part, i.e. that there's 3 kind of levels of campaigning that you have to do. So there's the objectives, which you can define at your campaign level. There's the ad sets, where you define your audience, your channels, your budget, where you kind of say, I only want to be on Instagram, or vice versa. And important, at the bottom level, that's where your ads level is. That's where you will define your visuals. That's where you will do your A/B testing. That's where it kind of the magic happens as far as this webinar is concerned, because we'll be talking about the pictures and the visuals for this. And that's also what we know kind of from all the research we've done, which defines about, let's say half or even more than the success of your campaign is how good is your visual in being thumb stopping, because that's what your visual needs to do. It needs to make sure that when people scroll through the 160 meters per day, because that's the average usage of a Facebook user, you need to make sure that your visual is arresting enough, is stopping, as in the stopping power, so at least they stop, they have a look at the visual, and then they decide where they want to kind of know more and click onto your vacancy. So I'm kind of normally I give a bit more detail on this, but as you know, the audience is mature, we won't go too deep. If this is complete hobble gobble to you, if you don't understand the difference between the three, that's not a problem. We have an interesting webinar on that where we go into more detail and explain every level. That's actually, there's a recording of that of Stephanie, who explains that much more eloquently than I do. And Stephen will also post a link to our content in the chat, where you can actually kind of look and find all our past webinars and our past content. But good, moving forward. One extra thing, I'm not going to again dwell too long on that because most of you are aware of this. What's going to be important is that to keep in mind that there's different levels where you want to engage with your potential candidates, right? Obviously, there's the attract phase where you're going to show the vacancy. That's at the end of your funnel, and that's when once they've seen the vacancy, they can apply, they can be selected and potentially hired. But there's two important phases before, which is the discover and the engage phase. I'm not sure if some of you have followed our seminar earlier this week on the big changes that came from Facebook, and which basically means that in the attract phase, you're going to have a lot more restrictions on targeting, because everything job related has less targeting possibilities in the new Facebook rules, especially driven by the fear of Facebook and the fear of Facebook of being seen as a discriminatory platform. So any targeting opportunities like age, gender are now not available anymore for those people running job ads. And again, if you have questions on that, the recording of that webinar will be available soon in our Simple Academy. Now, what's important though, those changes are not relevant if you're advertising the discover phase, where you're going to be mainly focusing on creating awareness for your brand or for your company. And those discover and engage phases are currently feasible to do that without the extra restrictions. But it's important to keep that funnel thinking in mind once you move along, and also once you start thinking about visuals, and to understand what you will need for each different phase, because it's going to be very important and very different whether you use discover advertising or attract advertising. We'll come back to that in a second. I'm just going to make a plea first. I'm not sure if there were any questions coming in, but we have my co-founder here who's very eager to answer questions. So please don't hesitate. Put them either in the chat box or in the questions tab. Any kind of questions you have, either about previous webinars or things I've said which are not clear. We want to make this as interactive as possible. Good. So we've explained some of the basics, the funnel thinking, what you need to keep in mind. But let's move on to the actual ads, and how to set up an ad. And what's going to be very important when you set up an ad is that you start thinking about, or you start realizing that there's no real truth out there. There's no, as I mentioned before, there's no silver bullet. There's no one picture which will work for every advertising, for every function, for every vacancy. And you're going to need to do some testing, right? And again, to bring everybody up to speed here, one of the advantages of Facebook is also that you can do some good A/B testing. And you can test different elements against each other. What's important in an A/B test is that, as you can see here, the example you can see here, we could test on copy, we could test on visual, we could test on job title, and you could test on call to action. But a proper A/B test only kind of changes one of those elements to make sure that you get the right results. So in this case, we tested one visual against the other. We'll show you some results in a couple of slides. But keep that in mind, because we'll come back to that in the end also. Do not test too many things at once. just change one variable, elsewise it's not going to be. Is that a word even?
No,
Elsewise.
elsewise.
Elsewise, let's make it's an official word as of now, right? I'm claiming it, I'm putting a trademark on there. Elsewise is a simple trademarked word as of today. But I think you know what I mean. So basically, what we're saying is testing is going to be important. So bear with us. And that's how a testing tree or a testing funnel might look like, is that at one level you test the copy, and once you know what the best copy is, you then start testing, for instance, with that same copy. You test 2 different visuals, and once you know what the best visual is, once you know the best copies, you then move on to the end. And at that level, for instance, you might test the function name. Okay, but keep this in mind, this kind of idea of a testing tree. In this case, it's a reverse tree. It's basically a Christmas tree on top, on its top. Again, something we'll be looking to trademark pretty quickly. Now, very important, when you do your testing, you need to do your setup properly. And again, want to go too much into detail, but something which is called UTM, which is short for Urgent Tracking Module. And you've seen these very long URLs. Once you click on them, I'm sure you've seen them before. This is important, even if you kind of haven't yet used those when you put your ads live on Facebook. And I know sometimes it's very tempting to kind of, Facebook asks you, do you want to boost this post, put some money behind it? We would strongly advise not to do that, because once you do that, you know how much money you spent. It's actually going to be very difficult to basically understand the results of that. So it's good to do a proper setup. And again, we're only skimming the top here of what it is, but by using UTM codes in your links, you'll be able to define what the source is, people coming from, what the medium is, and also that's where I want to get to, what the UTM term could be. And that's where you could say, okay, I'm testing here video versus picture on the content level, or audience A versus audience B, or it could also be function name A versus function name B. So not only when you do A/B testing, do you need to take care that your methodology is correct, i.e. only chase one variable at a time, but secondly, also very important, make sure that your UTM codes, so the link you upload to Facebook is also correct, that you'll be able to understand afterwards what that link means and what those codes means. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to then go into, for instance, Google Analytics and understand what the best way is of analyzing your data. Some of you might ask, and I'm just checking what nobody is asking, but some of you might ask, saying, Mark, why do you make it so complicated with UTM codes and Google Analytics and do the analysis there, if Facebook also offers you the possibility to do A/B testing? And I understand the question. The problem is that when you do an A/B test through the Facebook Business Manager, it will actually allow you to do the A/B test. It will take you a couple of days to understand what Facebook will think is the winner of that campaign. But you'll never really know why that is, i.e. meaning, is it because they've sent, is it because it's sending the most traffic to your website? But actually, you're interested in those ads that perform well because they deliver applicants, and they deliver candidates. It's very possible that if you don't set up your A/B test correctly in Facebook, that Facebook will not be able to measure that. And therefore, it's also always important that you can do the analysis yourself in Google Analytics to make sure that you draw the right conclusions and not just the result that Facebook gives you, which, as I mentioned before, could be driven by parameters that are not really the parameters you want Facebook to judge on. Again, I'm realizing I'm running through a lot of know-how, lots of different things here at the same time. If you're interested in knowing more about UTM codes, how to use them, how to set up your Google Analytics, please download our data-driven white paper, because that's going to give you a good background on that.
I have a question though.
There's a question. Do you have a question? There's a
question.
question.
No, there's a question from Joanne who says, and I'll read what she says. I find the A/B test a bit hard to understand because the ad creates a copy, but will there be a new budget for that, or does it take it from the entire campaign budget?
Okay, good point. Yes, obviously Facebook is not, if I understand the question correctly, your question is, will A/B test cost money? And yes, it will. So what's going to happen when you define, I'm just going to flick back here to the campaign components, right? When you have an ad set, you will have one ad set, and in that ad set, you will put two different ads, and that's where you will do the A/B testing. But obviously, the budget you define in your ad sets, let's say you want to be spending 20 euros per day on your ad set, right? That budget will then be used to run the A/B test at the ad level. Unfortunately, to make it a bit more complicated, Facebook will then quickly decide on which ad they will put more money. It's getting a bit detailed now on how to manage that properly. But the immediate answer to the question is yes, it's going to cost you money, and yes, it's going to take budget away from your other ads. I hope that's a quick answer to your question, Joanne.
And there's also a different question
Yeah.
on a different subject that altogether is much important. What are the new rules? Are there new rules for pictures? For instance, this case, Joanne is recruiting a nurse, and she says, "Yeah, can I use a picture of a female when I recruit a nurse? Is that seen? Is that seen as gender biased or discriminating?"
Okay. No. So as far as we know, there's two things we need to keep in mind here. One is the changes in the advertising policy of Facebook, which is called special ad categories, right? So if you set up your campaign, you'll have to indicate to Facebook that your ad is part of a special ad category, i.e. financing credit, housing, real estate, or job employment. And your ad for a vacancy will clearly fall into the third category. Once you click on that option, your targeting capabilities will be strongly restricted. I don't want to dwell too long on that. As I mentioned, gender-based targeting, age targeting, specific locations will not be possible anymore. That's one part of the answer. That there's not so much a real restriction on the kind of visuals you upload. And therefore, if you're only showing female nurses or male nurses or whatever you would call, that as such will not be impacted by the new rules of Facebook. But obviously, right, if on there you would put text like we're only looking for female nurses, or there might be other text on there which could be discriminatory, and then it will also be blocked by the Facebook review system. But there's a big difference in special ad categories has an impact on targeting, and not so much about what you can put on the visual, but obviously you should also not be kind of putting any discriminatory text on there either.
I think the bigger question there is how is your target audience gonna respond to the picture? Will people find it normal that you show a picture of a nurse, or will people see it as strange and say, maybe it would be better to put both in there? It depends on the kind of people you want to recruit to take that into account. As far as for pictures or for text, etc. I'd worry more about that than about specific Facebook rules, since rules on pictures are not that clear.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions or?
For the moment, no.
For the moment, no. Okay, so I hope, Joanne, we've answered those questions. So let's flick through the A/B testing here. We had the UTM codes, we've explained that. And then maybe let's see what the timing is here. Yes, Facebook Ads Library. I'll just go live for a second here. Sorry? I will just find my mouse. This is... let's ask a question here. Facebook Ads Library to maybe explain what this does, and I think you can see my screen. No, you can't see my screen.
No.
Okay, I'll drag that over here. Then
now you can see it.
Now you can see my screen. Basically, what Facebook Ads Library will do, it will allow you to check what your potential competitors of other companies, which advertising they are showing. So maybe just a question to the audience: is there any company you would like to see the ads, the Facebook ads from? So just shout out any company name. And let's see, Volvo.
See
Okay,
Volvo from Amber, and I think Cat was also typing.
right. I'll choose an ad category. All ads. Volvo. Let's have a look at the ads of Volvo. And here you can indeed see which ads are being run by Volvo at this moment. So it doesn't show you historic ads, but it will show you the ads they're currently running at the time. And interesting is that you can also see on what platforms are they showing them. But it's also going to give you a good idea of, for instance, what kind of ads are your competitors using, but also what's the kind of visuals they're showing. So this is always, if you're a bit stuck for creative ideas, go to Facebook Ads Library. We just shared the link to that. It's a good way of understanding what's happening. Actually, I'm just showing the impact of the special ads category here. It's shown, let's say, select Belgium. You will also be able to then look at specific employment ads. Let's see if Randstad is already. Let's take Randstad Deutschland. Interesting. So what you can actually see here. Okay, they're not showing anything. Let's have a look at. Sorry, that's obviously because they're. I'll take Randstad Belgium. That's. There you go. Let's have a look at the ads they're running. There you go. So that's some vacancy ads that Randstad is running on their and for their customers at this moment. So again, if you're stuck for ideas, use the Facebook Ads Library, and just purely out of interest, I'm going to see.
Could it be blocked for some users is a question. To my knowledge, I've never had that problem. So
you mean whether Facebook Ads Library is blocked?
Yeah.
No.
If the only thing I can think about is internal rules of your company.
But to Randstad's credit, and they've actually nicely categorized already their ads as being employment ads. So they are also doing and following the new rules from Facebook. Okay. Good. I'll let you kind of sort out the Facebook Ads Library widescreen with Stephen, but let's continue with the presentation. Let's go here. Good. So you need inspiration, go to the Facebook Ads Library. But let's start looking at some examples here and some A/B testing. And I'm looking to my right to know whether Stephen is ready to launch some polls. Not yet. Okay. Well, I'll shut up.
I'm ready.
I'll explain the system. We're going to be showing some ads, right? And in the poll, we're going to ask you what you think was working best once we did some A/B testing on that.
I'm totally ready.
You're totally ready. Go for Legerstock. Let's run the first one. And then let's run the first poll. So if you click on the right bottom of your screen, you can see polls. If you click on polls, you'll be able to participate and give your opinion.
It's a close race between left and right. It's actually a tie now. It seems like politics here. We're 50-50, left and right.
50-50. Okay.
It seems like the left is winning by a small margin. I don't know if it's statistically significant, but left is definitely taking the lead.
Right. We're closing the poll now because the results are in. So the left was winning and the left was right. I don't want to make that any kind of a bigger statement than it actually is. But we've had more applications on the picture on the left than we had on the right, which was, we'll be very honest, which was a bit surprising because we've launched this campaign in the beginning of the lockdown. We thought it would be a nice touch to refer to what was happening in the outside world. I'm not sure if you can see, but actually people are wearing masks and showing their smile through their smartphone. But basically, the numbers didn't agree. And that's the beauty of A/B testing. You can actually quickly learn what the audience is looking for and what's going to be working better for you. Let's do another one. And this was in one of our customers, one of our beloved customers, Be Electric, who is doing some amazing things on the front of sustainable energy. So same question here. On the left, you see one of their machines, which basically they use to turn cow shit into energy. And that's not a joke, that's actually what they do. It's fantastic technology. And on the right, you can see the team and the screenshot, a nice picture of the team. So you launch a poll or not?
If this were votes, it would be a Chinese democracy. Sorry for that. But it's about 100% to the right.
100% to the right.
No, we have a dissident, one on the left.
Okay, one on the left. So there's one non-right voter, but probably a bit too easy. But then again, I mean, yes, it was working better. But what's interesting is that the CPA, and I didn't explain it before, the cost per application. So that basically means for every applicant, if you divide your total cost by the numbers of applicants, that gives you a cost of application, is not that much higher, right? And we don't have time to do that, but when it gets really interesting is to then start looking at the quality of the candidates, which is a measure we also use because in our software, we track which candidates are approved by the customer. But this is kind of, this I would call something which, you would immediately think we're going to be showing the team picture and not the boring picture of the installation. And for whatever reason, it actually is still delivering applications at an interesting cost. Good. The second or the third example is the Harval one. So let's start a poll on that one. And I'm guessing we're going to have the same voting on the right situation again.
Exactly. It seems like a more right-wing country we are running now, with the left lagging really hard. They must have been governing the country and did a bad job. And the right is benefiting from that. They have about 70% of votes.
It's a bit of a tricky one. That's why we put it in there, because actually it was the other way around, right? And again, as you see, there's a lot more applications adding a lot. So it's almost 50% of the cost than the picture on the right. I will be very honest, we have no idea why that is, right? Because it's not like the picture on the left is obviously their office, right? If that's not clear. We have no clue why that is. It's not like it's, the most beautiful office you've ever seen. But the numbers are there, right? And again, that's why it's so important to put proper A/B testing in there, because you would think it's just a boring picture. But for whatever reasons, and those are reasons we honestly can't explain, the picture on the left was working better. I think we'll do a last one now.
Hold on. I was answering someone. The last poll is on Lumco.
It's on Lumco.
There we go.
One of our customers. They're active in construction, and they're basically tiling roofs or fixing roofs. So, with all you've learned till now, where are you voting, dear audience?
So clearly, the right has done a bad job now in governing the country, and that's why the left is taking a huge lead by 70%.
70%. Again, I would have to disappoint the left, which is something I would love to do, love doing, but it's the other way around. Again, also to our surprise, but we'll be very honest, and I hope our customer doesn't disagree with me. We didn't want to use a picture on the right. We asked the customer if he really didn't have any other better picture, because we didn't think this was going to work, and because of lack of other creative material, we used it, and as you can see, it gives a massive impact on the system. I hope the person who's on the left is not participating in this, because it might kind of hurt his confidence. But the numbers are what the numbers are, right?
I just want to interrupt because I have an interesting remark from Anne Calandra about the previous picture, and I missed the remark before, where she said, look,
there's also the part of the logo, where the logo was much clearer to her in BNP Paribas. Although it's also on the right, but and therefore maybe it scored better.
Okay.
But I think it's a very good
Very good
catch
point.
that
Very good
it's not only picture, it's making candidates, giving them comfort or giving them trust. So it can be done through pictures, through text, through logos, etc.
It's a very good point, actually. Yeah, I like the analysis. And while I'm looking at it, I actually realized that we haven't done a proper A/B test because we should have put the logos on the right-hand top in both cases. But that's learning for us. Good. All right, this was the last test. But I mean, basically, yes, it's a bit of a game here, but the important message is that do not trust your gut, right? But make sure you have some pictures, even if you think they will not be working properly. But obviously, you need to have the budget for that in order to do that. But as you can see, some proper A/B testing, even if it's going to be a run or longer running campaign, is going to save you a lot of money. Good. Now, hope we convinced you about the A/B testing importance. Something, by the way, which you can also do in our software very easily. I'll come back to that in a sec. So best practices. Let's start with the easy ones first. Obviously, if you're going to upload your pictures, make sure it's in the right format. Facebook will not necessarily tell you that if you upload a picture, it's the wrong format, but they will actually kind of juggle it around. They will do the cropping themselves. They will add some white space if needed. Basically, it's going to look like shit, right? So make sure that if you upload pictures, they are the right format, because otherwise it's going to impact your campaign. I know this sounds very basic, but unfortunately, we still see customers and we still see campaigns where that's not done properly.
I'll just dig in because there's some questions on various subjects. To start with, by Elke Hofman, who says, do you advise to add 6 pictures, or don't you advise to add 6 pictures and copy possibilities in one ad?
What do you mean? I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Elke,
Let me just have a look.
she's typing now, but I'm wondering, are you suggesting to add 6 pictures in one ad and make sort of a picture frame?
If you're saying, if you want to make 6 pictures in one ad set and then test them against each other, I would not do that at the same time, because that's basically kind of throwing money away, because you're never going to be able to kind of draw some conclusions. That's basically A, B, C, D, E, F testing. I would advise against that.
Or a carousel ad with multiple pictures. Well, the thing is, if you add a carousel ad with multiple pictures, you'll never know which one works best.
No, exactly.
And then you're not actually testing pictures, but you're testing Facebook possibilities or ad possibilities or Facebook formats.
I was just going to say that because actually what you then do, and that's also some of the testing we do, we test carousel versus the picture. Right? So that's a different kind of test. I can also tell you that carousel never wins, right? A carousel is much more expensive to show, and it's never going to give you the same results. So I think that in most of our tests, we don't even take carousels as a format anymore.
What actually, there's some clarification. Sorry for the ruckus. What Elke means is, why don't you can give 6 pictures to Facebook and let them test by themselves and see which one works best.
Okay.
Hard to say. The concept is exactly the same. It would be A, B, C, D, E, F testing. We have personally had not so good experiences with it, that we see different different results when we test it or we let Facebook test it. It also, one of the problems there is that they decide where it's placed. And if you test pictures A, B, C against each other, but one is in feed and the other one is on the right side, you'll clearly see different results. So the trick is to manage the sample yourself instead of letting Facebook manage it.
Because what you'll see is that once you put 6 pictures in one ad set, if you look at it in detail, already in the first 15 minutes, Facebook will start deleting or will start putting a budget of 2 pictures to 0. So on very, very small data sets. So I would not advise doing that approach.
And then there's a totally different but interesting question from Cassandra, asking how long should a campaign or an average vacancy campaign stay up in our experience?
Okay, so what we on average do is 30 days. And that's basically the standard timing for our campaigns for 2 reasons. One is the fact that on the beginning, it'll allow you and Facebook through some testing. You'll probably need to kind of take into account 5 to 7 days through some good A/B testing to get some learnings. Although even then, the testing should continue the whole campaign. Let's make that clear. But you need some data gathering in the beginning. And the second one is a very practical one, is that you also need some time to actually understand and analyze the candidates that are coming in, right? Which will take some time to look at the candidates, interact with the candidates, understand the quality, while at the same time your campaign is running. So our learning is, and that's also our standard length of campaigns, is 30 days. That seems to be the best way of doing that. Now, obviously, it's not because you budget for 30 days or you plan for 30 days, that if after 10 days you have your dream candidate, you couldn't stop, right? But please budget about, or foresee a budget for about 30 days.
There's one remark, and I'm sorry if there's one remark coming from Gonzalo, who says, well, the conversion, the hiring could be done on the worst performing ad. That's a very interesting remark again. Gonzalo, the way we look at it, hiring is a numbers game. And at the end, you just need one candidate, the right one. The thing is, there it's sometimes choosing between coffee, water, and tea. And the right candidate depends on, is also in the eye of the beholder, the one who does the selection. So we don't see, and don't quote me on this, but when we measure A/B testing, we don't see success as who is hired, because that is sometimes a subjective decision, but it's more on how many candidates, and the second interesting measure, how many interesting candidates do we have? And that for us is the real A/B test, and then the one who's hired, that could be that will be influenced by measures who are outside of the campaign, because it's the one who selects who will then do the judgment, and it's hard to track it back to the campaign. You can track it back, but it's not that relevant.
Any other questions? But yeah, I love the questions, guys. It's really nice to have an interactive session on this.
There's a question from Carl who asks if you can do A/B tests on the simple landing page, and says that you currently can't, and I see where he's coming from. But yeah, you can actually test landing pages, but then you would have to do 2 separate vacancies. The reason we don't do it in the same vacancy is that there's a technical reason for now, but also we think that the whole communication stream should be streamlined. That if you show an ad with one communication,
you're talking about that. That's my next slide.
But I'll get to. I'm sorry for the other viewers. We know Carl personally, and I'll get to that to you to say how you could do it. There's tons of questions. There's also Lotte, who says, "What if you have several vacancies to advertise for a similar target audience? Wouldn't your own ads compete against each other? Is it advisable to run them shorter, one after the other, or on the other hand, for a longer time, but all competing against each other?"
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think that there's 2 elements to that question. If you want to test, you have to run them together, right? Because even if you think, well, I keep everything the same, but if you run ads in November, it's going to perform differently than you run them in October. Why? Because November is Black Friday and the cost of advertising is a lot higher in November. I'm just giving one example here, right? So running ads consequentially might be interesting, but for other reasons, but not for testing. Why would you run ads sequentially? Sequentially, it's for instance if you're saying, okay, you have a small audience, small target audience, and therefore when you run an ad, the frequency of your ad will become high pretty quickly. The frequency meaning a number of times people have seen your ad. So obviously, if in your target audience, after a week or 2, the frequency of your ad is already 2, 2.5, 3, meaning that people on average have already seen your ad 3 times. That's the moment where you have to switch creatives and change to a different creative. So that might be a reason to adopt a different approach. So it's going to be dependent a bit about also your target audience. But first of all, the question is, do you have the money and the willingness to test campaigns and to test your ads? Any other questions or?
No,
Okay,
not for
I'll
the
just
moment.
continue then. I actually thought we were going to kind of be finished in half an hour, but very good. All right, but we're almost to the towards the end and some of the other learnings on best practices. Good. What do we know? And what we try to do is on one page fit a couple of our learnings. That again, you should always A/B test, but I think this is going above the level because we know that's why this is going to be relevant for most of your ads. Please use authentic pictures, right? It's very important that people understand these are real pictures, these are real people, these are not models, these are not stock images, these are not fake images. Show authentic pictures so people actually believe what you're saying. You should never forget you're in a medium where just above your advertising, people have seen pictures of their friends, which are also not stock images. So people will smell stock images. Not Facebook, because we've had that question before. Facebook doesn't care, right? Basically, at the end of the day, whether you upload real pictures or stock images, but you should care, right? Also make sure that when you use pictures of your team as the one on your left, make sure, especially in Europe, that you have the approval of everybody on that picture to be shown on social media, right? There's some GDPR restrictions. You're going to be responsible making sure that those are followed. The second part is have a uniform communication. What does that mean? It's very important that if people click on your ad, right, that they find the same language, the same picture, the same logo on the page where they will be landing. So you might need to make sure that there's a consistency between your advertising and your landing page, because that's going to be very important. You know, it's not, we see about 20-30% of people who don't even stay longer, what we call bouncing. They just stay 1 or 2 seconds on a page and then they're gone. There's a couple of reasons that it could be the speed of your website because it's kind of taking too slow to load. It could be your website is not mobile friendly, but it also could be that there's no consistency in the pictures and the design language between the ads and the landing page. And finally, keep in mind the Facebook best practices. You can Google those. Actually, it's the advice what Facebook is giving, but take that with some kind of a grain of salt, as they would say. There used to be a rule that you shouldn't have more than 20% of your picture taken by text. Officially, that's still allowed. But for instance, on this one, we would say it would be good to not have too much text on there. And make sure the picture is the main star of your ad. What else? Put a banner on there. It's very important to make it very, very clear that this is a vacancy ad. Why is that? I give you a kind of just popping in my head actually now. We didn't do this always. We have one of our customers is Neuhaus. You actually can see them on the screen on the bottom. One of our most famous chocolate brands. We did a campaign in February for them to find somebody for their factory. We obviously used pictures of chocolate. We had massive clicks, at a very low cost actually, but nobody converted. And we then realized that we were running a chocolate ad right before Valentine's Day. So obviously people see chocolate, they think Valentine, they think this might be a promotion for Neuhaus. Let's click on that, right? So it's going to be very important to use your creative, to use your picture to filter already some clicks, because you want the people to click on your ad because you're going to be paying for those clicks. You want the people to know that this is actually a vacancy ad. So put a wanted banner on there. Put a function title to make that very clear. Branding elements, I kind of talked about that already a bit. Keep consistency in your branding elements, but also use all the elements on the picture to kind of, talk about your brand. So we saw some pictures with the green because those were the branding colors of those of both Arval and the Nationale Loterij. But Trema has a different branding color, so they were also using different elements. And then the last bullet point, tailor everything to your target audience. We've talked about that before. Make sure that you keep in mind what's the kind of audience you're looking for, and what are the kind of pictures they might be clicking on. And that's where the Facebook Ads Library could help you, understanding who your competition is. Good. Talked about this. Never, ever, ever use stock images unless basically you're forced at gunpoint to do so, and don't do too much text. It's a visual medium, especially in Instagram. So make sure your picture can do the talking and your text is only there to support the ad. Good. We haven't talked about videos yet. And I think the message we want to give here, because that would be kind of a whole different webinar, keep in mind that, again, your video, at least in the beginning, it should be thumb stopping. So use the images in the beginning that are very strong to make people stop and want to look at the rest of your video. Make sure you don't put audio on there that's relevant. So if you have people talking in your video, which we would advise against, but still, if you want to have people talking in your video, make sure it's subtitled, so that basically, because 90% of people are watching without sound on. And also, very important, don't make it too long. So we think 15 to 20 seconds is the maximum amount the video should take. And finally, although video is popular, many people are using video. If you are using video, and we at least advise you to test it, always also A/B tested it against the picture, because we have plenty of campaigns where the picture is outperforming the video. You've spent a lot of time on the video, you're very proud of your video, but that doesn't mean your audience will be thinking the same about that. And even within the video, you could do some A/B testing. This is an example of a customer's, the city of Antwerp. Antwerp, for those who don't know, the center of the world, where we're also based, and very proud to be based, actually. They were looking for somebody to run, to be part of their team. And what we've done is we actually set up an A/B test on video. I'll quickly show it now. We've used exactly the same videos and exactly the same pictures, but we've put the wanted and the vacancy name in the beginning in the video on the left, and we've put the wanted and the vacancy name at the end of the video on the right. So just to show that even in video, you can do some A/B testing, even using the same material, using the same pictures. And obviously we ended with both pictures with the logo of the city. We don't have time to do our poll on this one, but keep in mind the A/B testing, you can do it on everything that's visual related. But when you do, we've talked about that already, don't do A, B, C, D, E, F testing. Just make sure you only have 2 parameters that you test, one against the other. And the last one is, don't forget about your UTM codes. Because if you don't do those properly, you'll not be able to kind of draw the right conclusions on that. Good. Now, the good news is, and this is a surprise you've been waiting for, is that we've know this is complicated, we've know this is difficult, but we also know there's a massive amount of upsides of actually using Facebook as a platform, and that's why we developed some software to help you out with this. Because you've stayed at the end of the webinar, we're going to share a link with you to register, and you have 2 weeks of free trial. I'm not sure if you're able to do that. Please register, not only because you can actually try our software, but also because, and I'll show you in a second, you'll find our academy with all our content. Just in a nutshell, what will our software do for you? It will kind of allow you to very easily set up your campaign, do some A/B testing. I will show that in a second. But even more importantly, our algorithm will also start drawing conclusions from which A/B test was working best, what should we do, how do we need to set up your campaign. I think we have 2 more minutes, so I'll just quickly go to our app, and I'll probably need to log in because our head of IT is very stringent. And let's just take a dummy let's stay on the theme. We're looking for a barista, and our software will kind of provide you with a very handy checklist on showing what you need to do. So step by step, we will help you set up your campaign. It will help you set up your advertising. So therefore, you can change pictures, you can change text, you can change the color of the banner, you can add your logo. So you don't need Photoshop skills, you don't need any other skills. You can do everything within our software, and you can also, for instance, add a second visual, which will then our software will automatically A/B test this visual against this and start drawing conclusions from that. You can actually also build your vacancy page in here, so you can actually have consistency between your visuals on the advertising with your branding, with your colors on the vacancy page. That will then be the page that people will see once they click on the advertising. And then once you go live on the social media button, you'll be able to see all the data from your advertising. Our system will start automatically turning off, turning on the best working ads. And once the candidates are flowing in, you'll actually be able to, within that same tool, manage your candidates. You can have a look at what the answers are they have given about their background, about their experience. You can email them, you can take notes about the candidates. Let's just show that here. You have a note-taking function. And then once you know what you want to do with Ross, and where you think Ross is a good candidate for a barista for your coffee shop, you can then drag them to the interesting category. And then you have a nice visual overview of actually where your talent pool, your candidate pool is. So basically, this software will help you set up everything from your first advertising to your landing page, to your candidates. Everything is going to be in there. And because we're such lovely people, and because you've stuck around till the end, you get a 2 weeks trial for free. And I'll go even wilder. If you set up your first campaign this week, let's say before Monday, we'll give you 50 euros in advertising credits for the first one who has put up their campaign. So there you go. And before I forget, here on the bottom left of the, you can click on the Academy, and then you will see all the white papers, all the webinars we've been given in the past. There's lots of interesting content there, which you can also download for free. Good. Yes, I'm giving away the money. I should never do these webinars with the CEO, because he's the money man. Good. All right, but I think that brings us neatly till the end of our today. Let's have a look at but that's basically our last slide. There's one more slide here. We didn't adapt it. We didn't put. I'll have to. It was a last-minute decision to add Stephen.
Paul, I would like to know if people found it interesting.
Yes,
or no.
Please. We have one more poll for you, but we also have some time for Q&A. So, any other questions, any other feedback you want to give us? And we're just going to launch a poll to get your score on the quality of this webinar. So please give me a high score, because if I don't get a good score, my boss will not pay me my salary of this year. My kids will not have their Christmas gifts. No pressure, okay? No pressure, just be honest. Is there any number below 10, Stephen, in the poll or not?
I'm sorry. There are some numbers below 10.
Okay, people.
We have some sixes.
God.
We have 5 even, Mark.
Well, I'll have to live with
It's
that.
kind of like your report card when I met you at university. It was more 5s though, but there's also some 10s. So
that's good.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, people.
Don't hesitate to give comments on what we could improve. I see some more questions coming in the chat.
Yes, let's have some questions.
What is the subscription fee?
Okay, so the current subscription fee is 349 euros per month, and it will allow you to run 10 campaigns simultaneously. So basically 349 euros per month, and then you can have 10 campaigns live at the same, 10 different campaigns, obviously, live at the same time. Any other questions? I'm looking now to the screen to see if there's questions popping up, but I can actually see that here.
You're actually looking at the screen now.
What did I say?
To the screen.
To the screen, yes.
A link to for a demo. There's
Yes.
Joanne. There's a link when you use the webinar app register, and I'll put it again in there.
There you go.
Then you can register
Oh,
the
yeah,
app.
sorry. What I'm gonna do,
Okay.
Joanne, I can actually send you a link to a. This is a link to a demo. So if you really want to have a demo, if you want me to kind of explain a bit more in detail what it's like, just plan in a meeting there, 15-minute meeting, and I will show you. If you have 2 pictures, we'll even set up your first campaign. So everybody who wants to have a live demo with me or with somebody else from the team, just click on the demo link, and we will run you through that in 15 minutes. I promise it won't take longer. That's really all the time we need to get you up and get you up and running. All right, Joanne, thanks.
And really also for you, if you'd like more info on how to work with it, you can
Yes.
use the same link to book a demo with Mark.
Okay. Good. I think we're probably on it. Is it the question tab there?
Any other questions? If somebody wants to see Mark dance now, ask for it. He will earn his Christmas bonus.
This is the last time we do a webinar together. Dance. Yeah, Cassandra, I'm sure you want me to see me dance. Yes. Okay. Good. Any more questions? Or I think we're honestly we're spot on 3 o'clock. I'll just check what Rudy is typing to see if there's other questions. Okay, good question, Rudy. So we propose to spend about 50 euros per day. I think that's kind of the budget which we know is a good budget to allow you to do the system, to allow some testing. But it's up to you to decide on how much money you want to spend.
And frankly, it's the 50 euros per day is one parameter. The second parameter is the number of days, and that depends on the function. In reality, there is a cost per candidate depending on the function, and it's pretty easy to explain. If you're looking for a PHP developer, you'll probably spend 150 euros per candidate. If you're looking for somebody who drives a lorry with a normal driver license, you'll pay about 10 euros per candidate, because there's more availability and there's a much lower threshold for people to apply. So